session. Ladies and gentlemen, as we gather once again for the second day of Islamabad Non-Proliferation Conference 2024, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today. We are honored to have Lieutenant General Sarfraz Sattar, a prominent figure in Pakistan's strategic landscape and an advisor to National Command Authority. We look forward to hearing his thoughts and perspectives on challenges and opportunities that lie ahead in ensuring global peace and stability. Before inviting him on the stage, let me introduce our worthy speaker. Lieutenant General Sarfraz Sattar was commissioned in Armored Corps in 1984. He is graduate of Command and Staff College, Quetta, Egyptian Staff College, Cairo, and National Defense University, Islamabad. He holds a diploma in Arabic language. He has varied experience of instructional, command, and staff assignments. His career in the Army, which spanned 38 years, was marked by command of his parent regiment, the command of an infantry brigade in North and South Waziristan during Operation Rahe-e-Najat, followed by his appointment as Defense and Army Advisor at New Delhi, India from 2010 to 2013. On promotion and repatriation from India, he was appointed Director General Military Intelligence in GHQ from 2013 to 2015. During this period in military intelligence, he remained in the lead in Operation Zarb-e-Azd throughout the length and breadth of the country's restoring peace and bringing normalcy to the internal security situation in Pakistan. He then commanded an infantry division along the working boundary with India during the time of Uri crisis. This was followed by command of a strike corps of Pakistan Army, and his last assignment was Director General Strategic Plans Division, during which period he saw through the Pulwama crisis before his premature retirement in December 2019. He has since taken up the responsibilities as an advisor to National Command Authority. Please join me in welcoming General Sarfraz Sattar to the stage. Sir, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my singular pleasure and honor to address this concluding session of the two-day Islamabad Non-Proliferation Conference. I understand it's always difficult to come up on the stage and talk at the end for two reasons. One, that most what has had to be said has already been said. And second, that despite that I see a lot of you sitting in the hall, most people don't remain in the receptive mood. But the good news from my side is that from the time allotted to me, I will try and wrap up within the next 30 minutes or so. I just want to say that this is by no means an effort to offer a reflection or conclusions on this conference. But having listened and learned through the last 2 days, I will try and make some sense of it, while leaving the conclusions and the lessons learned to the organizers for later. I will also try and offer some personal perspective on the various issues discussed. Let me commence first by saying that this event is not only the first of its kind by any think tank in Pakistan, but also that it couldn't have come at a more precarious and eventful time than the one that we are witnessing in our neighborhood and in the Middle East in general. Conversely, it couldn't have come at a better time when regions both to our west and to our east and the world in general seem to be in upheaval owing to the ongoing conflicts in Palestine and in Ukraine, much of which has been talked about by various speakers. While we are also witnessing unprecedented developments in other regions, like the illegally occupied Indian Jammu and Kashmir, South China Sea, in the Koreas, and in Taiwan. The world, therefore, seems to be at an inflection point, as it is witnessing tectonic shifts in the erstwhile rules-based order at the hands of the same powers that had helped create those rules during the Cold War after years of painstaking effort at diplomacy and at statecraft. Now, before I dwell further on the issue of strategic stability, future of arms control and nuclear risk reduction, around which most of my talk is tailored, let me commence by first of all thanking Dr. Naeem Salik and his entire team at the SVI for not only masterminding the idea of this conference, but also compliment them for organizing and conducting it in a thoroughly professional manner, by collecting a galaxy of experts from around the globe, and some of whom were with us through the electronic media as well. We have been thus fortunate to listen to different perspectives of different experts who came packed with their own experience and their own points of view. And needless to say, that it is by listening to these perspectives and angles that we can draw our own conclusions. I am also certain that success of the event has laid the foundations for regularly organizing such events in years to come, and as Dr. Naeem alluded to during his opening remarks as well yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, as we have witnessed, this two-day tightly packed conference has brought out many differing thoughts, important perspectives, and lessons for us to ponder upon. I am pretty certain for when the follow-up reports are published, howsoever academic they may be, they will serve as useful repository for experts, academicians, students, and practitioners or planners to arrive at correct conclusions, and it will also, I hope, serve as an appropriate input for the concerned decision makers. Ladies and gentlemen, as we generally understand strategic stability to be the lack of incentive for any party to initiate a nuclear first strike due to deterrence provided by mutually assured destruction, or making the first strike less tempting due to ensuing crisis. But that is as far as the bookish definition goes. In reality, the political differences, or the polarization and contestation, and the technological advances are the dual factors which play a destabilizing role to disturb strategic stability. As ample speakers have pointed out in their comments, in the world that we live in today, both factors have dealt a major blow to this international order. The first such blow came in February of 2022, when after repeated warnings by Russia to stop expansion of NATO eastwards, the Russians mounted a calibrated and limited special military operation against Ukraine. This blow to the contemporary world order was a direct result of inevitable consequences of colliding ideas and interests. Resultantly, from March of 22 to February of 23, 6 resolutions were tabled in the UN General Assembly by the Western Bloc led by the US. And these were basically aimed to condemn Russia. Though these resolutions got carried, but the voting pattern on these resolutions clearly brought out differing opinions between the global south and the global north, as has been pointed out repeatedly by various speakers. The disquiet in the former, that is the global south, about Western hypocrisy towards violation of their sovereignty, indifference to the inequality in global wealth distribution, lack of sensitivity towards the development challenges of the south, or the non-availability of proper health care, or even access to scientific knowledge, and the overall imbalance in the international representation at the high table of the global governance has been thoroughly exposed. Therefore, we saw that the global south was not entirely persuaded by the Western argument that Russian invasion must be condemned without reference to the prior history of NATO's geographic expansion, and as such, they seemed willing, at least privately, to give Moscow's fears about contraction of its geopolitical buffer much greater credence than is acceptable in the West. So most chose to stay aloof from the conflict by abstaining from the voting. Today, as we speak, the conflict continues to prolong amid US and European intransigence, who continue to supply sophisticated defense equipment, including aircraft and missiles, to Ukraine. As a reaction, Russian deployment of nuclear-capable missiles in Belarus has put the precarious regional and global nuclear order under stress. The second major blow to the international order came when Israel's unchecked bloodshed of innocent civilians, including deliberate targeting of women and children, started since the events of 7th of October 2023 as a result of Hamas's prior action. The Israeli genocide has continued ever since, resulting in a killing of almost 42,000 people, including 12,000 women and children. The conflict has now engulfed Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and Iran. Israel's unchecked spree of wanton killing of civilians, Hamas and Hezbollah leadership in both Lebanon and in Iran has sparked widespread condemnation and hate against US and the West, who continue to aid and abet Israeli atrocities, astonishingly terming them as self-defense. The international community in particular, the UN, has totally been ineffective because of the polarization between East and West. Muslim countries particularly feel utterly powerless in the face of Western and US bluster. The result is serious breach of international law, and humanitarian disaster is on the cusp of engulfing the whole region into a war with attendant risks to strategic and nuclear stability. The situation in Gaza is such that the UN Secretary General invoked Article 99 of the UN Charter, which states that the Secretary General may bring to attention of the Security Council any matter which, in his opinion, may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. This has been done for the first time by the current Secretary General during his entire tenure in office. However, this did not impact the political calculations of the powerful members of the Security Council. In fact, the Security Council only came into session when the US called into session on the 2nd of October, in the wake of the Iranian missile strikes in response to the Israeli killings of the Hamas and Hezbollah leadership. All the Western permanent members have condemned Iranian missile strikes. The Secretary General appealed for stopping the sickening cycle of violence and escalation, calling for a ceasefire in Lebanon as well as in Gaza. Russia and China condemned the Israeli attacks in Lebanon, killing of Ismail Haniyeh and Hassan Nasrallah, and called for Israel to immediately halt and stop the hostilities. This once again has exposed the differences between global North and South, resulting in laying bare the world body's inability to affect the situation, which remains precarious to this day, thus clearly making the strategic stability of the region more and more tenuous at the altar of national security. Situation in the region is once again on the brink, as the US and Israel prepare to respond to the Iranian missile strikes. With this kind of tit-for-tat response, each time the situation is likely to witness further escalation of violence. If sanity does not prevail now on either side, the world may actually head towards catastrophe of unmatched proportions. In addition to these raging conflicts, the US is actively pursuing China containment policies in Asia-Pacific by building blocs like Quad and AUKUS, much of which has been talked about by various speakers, and significantly, it is also transferring nuclear-armed submarines to a non-nuclear weapon state, Australia. Apprehensions about these very issues have been repeatedly expressed, as I just said, by so many speakers during the course of this conference. This simply underscores the importance of this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to further highlight that India, which is a member of one of these arrangements, is also receiving unprecedented supply of Western weaponry. Such developments in our neighborhood and beyond are bound to evoke reaction in the shape of renewed arms race or a response of some kind in Southeast Asia and in Asia Pacific, where in illegally occupied Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, South China Sea, Taiwan, the Koreas, they figure out as prominent future conflict zones. Owing to the flux in geopolitical order, the prevailing arms control and disarmament situation also does not present an inspiring picture. As we heard various speakers say, the demise of the 1972 ABM Treaty in 2002, the collapse of the Nunn-Lugar Cooperative Reduction Program in 2014, the termination of the 1987 INF Treaty in 2019, and that of the Open Skies Treaty in 2021 has greatly deteriorated the arms control architecture put in place between US and Russia during the Cold War. The chances of extension of this new start between Russia and United States in 2026 also seem very slim, after which, ladies and gentlemen, the nuclear arsenal of both the countries will be unconstrained by any verifiable limits. Therefore, the credibility of non-proliferation regime is eroding, and the possibility of nuclear arms control proposals are bleak, thus raising the prospects of returning to the Cold War-like arms race. Furthermore, there is a third vibrant actor in the nuclear current nuclear arms race, China. The Asian theater will likely become the focus of an arms race, especially if the US deploys the INF range missiles in Asia, in which both Russia and China are likely to be trapped. This will in turn also trigger India-Pakistan dyad. Of course, all this means a death knell to the multilateral arms control negotiations under the United Nations Forum, where NPT and CD are already in a bind. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from the modernization and introduction of precision capability in conventional military technologies, revolution in C4I2SR, and application of AI and introduction of lethal autonomous weapons, one additional ingredient or catalyst for nuclear weapons modernization is the development of ballistic missile defense systems. In this field, as you are well aware, the US, Israel, and India have invested and collaborated in building each other's systems. On 1st of May 2001, Washington promised that it would assist its allies in developing BMD programs. They vetoed the PAROS in 2005. Since then, PAROS has lost its support in the CD. Moreover, the confidence in the BMD potential technologies obliges nuclear armed states to increase the number and potency of their weapons, such as introduction of MIRVs to defy missile defense shields. Russians have taken seriously the US missile defense system build-up in Europe and the development of US new low-yield submarine-launched ballistic missiles. So it seems have the Chinese, resulting in stimulation of both countries to build new nuclear capabilities. In addition to all this, the NATO's nuclear defense policy reveals that as long as nuclear weapons exist, NATO will remain a nuclear alliance. Its leadership has acknowledged that current conditions for further nuclear disarmament are unfavorable. Credible deterrence and defense based on an appropriate mix of nuclear, conventional, and missile defense capabilities forms the core element of NATO's overall strategy to prevent conflict and war. With all this background, what is the future of international arms control and behavior of nuclear weapon states or nuclear risk reduction? Ladies and gentlemen, in my reckoning, given the current global strategic environment and trends, nuclear disarmament seems to be an unacceptable option for nuclear weapon states. However, they may be inclined towards nuclear CBMs and nuclear arms control in order to avoid accidental or inadvertent use of nuclear weapons. Though the nuclear weapon states have always been conscious of their sovereign right of self-defense and maintaining an advantageous position in global politics, the nuclear arms control, that is stopping horizontal proliferation, is clearly in nuclear armed states' interests in order to maintain strategic stability. But for even this to happen, the geopolitical stability has to be achieved and conflicts like Ukraine and Palestine need to be stopped, and conditions for potential conflict zones like the shaken and volatile situation in the illegally occupied Indian Jammu and Kashmir, the situation in Taiwan and South China Seas, and Korea's need to be normalized by giving space to diplomacy. Having listened to almost all the important discussions during the course of these 2 days, my conclusion is that world can only be safe once there is a recognition of interests of all states in the spirit of accommodation, cooperation, and mutual respect for and acceptance of various societies, cultures, beliefs, and value systems based on human dignity and equality. And the responsibility for this rests primarily with the advanced and the developed worlds, that is, the haves. And unless we are able to live in the spirit of accommodation, humanity will not be able to fight with the common challenges of disease, hunger, malnutrition, poverty, and most importantly, the challenges of climate and environmental degradation. It is imperative that we adopt this spirit, because if we don't, then the advancement in modern science and destructive potential of technologies, we may be driving the world towards destruction. Let me conclude here in the words of Mr. Bernard Broch, who was the US representative to the United Nations Atomic Energy Commission back in 1946, when he said, "If we fail, then we have damned every man to be the slave to fear." Let's not deceive ourselves. We must elect world peace or world destruction. Now, at the end, let me once again thank Dr. Salik, Dr. Nasir Hafiz, the entire SVI team, all our local and especially our foreign participants and guests who've traveled long distances for their invaluable contribution to make this conference a success. I thank you all for a very patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your address. Your valuable perspectives were truly enriching and have given us much to reflect on and take forward. At the end, I would request Dr. Naeem Ahmed Salik to present the conference memento to our keynote speaker, Lieutenant General Sattar.